Hello, I'm AJ Hapner, and today I'd like to take a moment of your time to talk about Alfred Lord Tennyson's poem Ulysses, and why I think it would be a great addition for study and consideration into any Victoria-era literature unit. Alfred Lord Tennyson was a Victoria-era poet said to have been one of the most famous of his age. The people would come to know his name just as easily as they knew Queen Victoria's. He was born in 1809 in Lincolnshire into a large family that endured many mental and financial setbacks. So much, in fact, that his only real means of escape was through writing his poetry. In 1827, he attended Trinity College in Cambridge as a means of physical and emotional escape from his dysfunctional family life. But it allowed him opportunities to showcase his writing to others, including his dear friend Arthur Henry Hallam. However, the death of his father forced Tennyson to leave Cambridge and return home since his grandfather refused to support his schooling and poetic aspirations. Tragedy struck again with the death of his friend Hallam in 1833. The combination of his father's death, Hallam's death, brutal poetry reviews, the increasing fear of poverty, and the self-isolation of being back in his hometown caused a mental breakdown for Tennyson. This led to him refusing to publish any poetry for roughly 10 years. The fear of publishing his work did not stop Tennyson from writing, though. During this 10-year period, he wrote many poems that would later be published. Among them was the poem Ulysses, a short poem about the ancient Greek hero of the Iliad and the Odyssey, Odysseus. However, Tennyson refers to him as his Roman counterpart, Ulysses. The poem takes place after all his years of war and wanderings at sea. Ulysses is unsatisfied with his returned life at home, and wishes to set out again to sea. He is confident that his son Telemachus will play his part as heir to the kingdom well, allowing Ulysses to take to the seas once again, where he might find the Happy Isles, where the great warrior of the Trojan War, Achilles, resides. Achilles is of course long dead, which makes the Happy Isles Elysium, an isle in the Greek underworld. Ulysses ultimately is setting out to find what he believes to be his true final rest. This work could offer any unit of British literature with emphasis on the Victorian age a different perspective that might broaden a student's learning and reading experience. As we know, the Victorian age poets drew inspiration for their poetry from a vast variety of other art forms. They were inspired by theater, fiction, music, art, and often drew from the nostalgia of ages past. Tennyson's Ulysses is a prime example of this, since the poem is a dramatic monologue, Ulysses being the single character addressing the silent audience. Studying this poem would open up a vast avenue of other fields to study, since Tennyson was one of the poets who pioneered the created dramatic monologue form in poetry. Like other themes of Victorian poetry, the story of Ulysses is one of fiction, but the poet Tennyson is able to draw from that into his own life. Ulysses' overall theme is one of nostalgia, and at the time it was written while Tennyson was still mourning the loss of his friend Hallam. Just like Ulysses, Tennyson was nostalgic for a time when his life made sense. Tennyson's Ulysses would also bring something very old yet new into our literature units: mythology. Many students from years past often learned about Greek and other variety of myths in their youth, either from school or in their own independent studies. Tennyson's poem Ulysses is directly based on Homer's Odyssey, one of the most famous ancient Greek poems. To study the poem Ulysses would require some knowledge of Homer's epic, which allows teachers to teach their students about these timeless stories. Or at the very least, it would inspire another generation to seek out these stories on their own. The poem by itself is important. That's why it should be studied in literature, and what it represents provides a greater reason for inclusion into our unit. It represents a chance to branch beyond a single poem and learn more about who we are. When we study literature, across any time period, we are often committing our time and attention to the study of older stories, even though at times it's difficult to find a connection between our lives and that of those who wrote these stories. We are still driven to look. Ulysses, at his core, is just a man trying to get home, and ultimately being unsatisfied with what he finds there. Tennyson wrote this poem when he was in a low place. Maybe he drew inspiration from Ulysses. Maybe he was just a man who wanted to leave all this behind and chase after a friend long since gone. Studying this poem can help us as English majors, writers, or simply as readers draw a deeper understanding as to who we are when we create something, and who we want to be when it's done. Thank you for your time, and I hope you enjoyed this presentation. Thank you for watching.